Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Business Essentials podcast. I'm your host, Veronika, and today we're going to be speaking with Andrea Liebross. Andrea is a sustainable success coach for women and a podcast host. She's going to be talking to us about mindset and how to be sure that we're spending our time on the right things.
We only have 24 hours in the day. What is worthy of your time? And if you really look at what you've done, say in the last 24 hours, is it all worthy of your time? You don't have to have every minute planned. You just need to know what makes you tick as a person and then put the business and the professional stuff on top of that.
So if you want to learn how to create time in your day and have the right mindset for success, stick around and I'll be back with Andrea right after this.
Tony Robbins once said, "No matter how many mistakes you make or how slow you progress, you are still way ahead of everyone who isn't trying." This is the Biz Essentials. You want to grow, get ahead, keep the spark. Here you'll get valuable insights and empowerment to grow personally and professionally. Isn't it about time you turn your dreams into successful passion projects? Learn how to be productive, be successful, be joyful, and more importantly, be yourself. The Be Essentials. This is the Biz Essentials. And this is your host, Veronika of Veronika Ventures.
Andrea, I'm so happy to have you here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
I am a business and life coach for mostly women, although I've got a few men clients. And I really help them figure out how to grow themselves personally and professionally. So I'm a big believer in the fact that our businesses and our lives are very much intertwined. Lots of clients come to me thinking about their business, but then when we get into it, they realize that a lot of the things that may be going on in the background in their personal lives are impacting their business or their professional life. And I also think that it's not all just about what we do or what we need to do. It's a lot about how we think. So I also help them figure out how to put both the mindset piece into action along with the systems and processes. It's not just kind of one or the other.
That sounds amazing because, yes, it is true that our mindset seems to be everything in anything that we approach.
Yes, it's very true. I like to say that thinking on purpose is really the key.
Thinking on purpose. I like that. I hadn't heard that before.
Yeah.
So you mentioned like work-life balance. That is something that I completely and totally struggle with. And I know I'm not the only one. You're a mom, right? How do you do it?
Yeah, I'm a mom to two and a dog mom of two big dogs. I like to say I have two kids, two husbands, two kids, two dogs, and one husband. But how do you do it? You know what? I don't really think there is such a thing as balance, to be honest. It's all about what you're capable of and what you have the capacity to do. And I think most of us are capable of doing lots of things. And if we're not capable, we're willing to learn how to do it. But having the capacity to do it is a whole other ball game. And that really involves just a series of choices. What are you choosing to spend your time on? With whom? Doing what? We're capable, but do we have the capacity? That's another story.
I perpetually feel like I'm running at like 102% capacity. And therefore, I almost always feel like I'm running behind, which is super stressful. It's totally self-imposed. If I were your client, what would you tell me to do?
I would tell you to stop. People think they need to start lots of other new things to help them work through this. I kind of say like stop and pause and decide what is worthy of your time. We only have 24 hours in the day. What is worthy of your time? And if you really look at what you've done, say in the last 24 hours, is it all worthy of your time? You don't have to have every minute planned. You just need to know what makes you tick as a person and then put the business and the professional stuff on top of that. Because if you're not really ticking as your own person, then all the other things are not going to be attended to in the way they need to be attended to. Like you're not showing up as the best version of yourself.
Perfect. So the way I understand it is you need to take a little pause, and evaluate what it is that you do in each day and what is important to you, and then structure your day based on doing the things that are important to you versus just filling it in with all of the stuff.
And I think a lot of times, if you think about it, we focus on like our to-do list and we like to check things off. Our brain likes that. It likes to be efficient and cross things off. But really, the things that move the needle, kind of that make the impact, are things that need to be planned. And a lot of times they have multiple parts. And we don't do those. Like I always like to say, like cleaning out the garage, it never gets done. It's always a really good idea, but it never gets done because it seems so overwhelming. And it's something that's going to take like the whole day. But if you can break that up into 10 little to-dos, it's going to get done. And then what else on that list can be delegated or eliminated? And if you're not the only person in the world that can do it, then it probably can get delegated. It may not get done the way you want it to get done, but it can get delegated. And then the eliminate category, it might just be eliminate for now, not forever. I did a podcast, How to Create Time When You Think You Have None. So that sounds like you, Veronika.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go back and listen to that episode.
You are.
Well, we're on the subject though. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your podcast and what is that about?
So my podcast is called Time to Level Up. It's really made for the person who, again, knows that they're capable of doing a lot more, but may not be doing it. Not doing a lot more, meaning like packing more things into their day, but really making a bigger impact. Adding to the world value bank, like putting more value out there in the world. And how do you do that? Because again, no one feels like they have any time to do anything. That's kind of my way of adding to the value bank of the world, giving people access to some like little doses of thinking on purpose.
It kind of reminds me of that story. I'm not sure if you've heard it, where the professor talks about the sand and the rocks.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Mm-hmm.
For our listeners who may not have heard it before, but it's a professor who's doing an assignment with his students. And the premise of it is, how do you get all of this stuff into a jar? And if you start with the sand, you can't get the rocks into the jar. But if you start with rocks and you put those things in first, the big stuff, that really counts, and then you fill it in with the sand, everything fits nicely.
That's true. And that rocks concept, Gino Wickman has a book called Traction. His theory is based off of what he calls an entrepreneurial operating system. So I work with clients a lot to implement this entrepreneurial operating system. And they talk about quarterly goals as being rocks. So that's funny you brought that up.
That is funny. It's funny because before I really started delving into this and making sure my mindset was correct, I would think on these kind of things and think like, it's not a big deal to actually write those down. I can just think about it in my head.
Yes. Stop wasting time writing the goals down. Just start doing it, right?
Right. Exactly. But now I can totally see the value in all of that because of just the way our brain is programmed to work. Like you said, our brain likes checking stuff off. And it's so true because when I make a list of things like this is what I'm going to do, and I really focus on doing it, it is so satisfying to just be like, check, haha. I accomplished something. In fact, I recently had a therapy session. I was complaining to my therapist, like, I feel like I never get stuff done. I'm working from morning to night and I'm never getting anything done. She just said, write down everything you do in a day. And so I did it. And I was like, wow, I do a lot in one day. Okay, I feel a little better about myself.
Have you ever done the exercise? I call it like recapturing lost time. I asked you, what are your top 3 priorities in life right now? What do you think you'd say?
My family, my job, and then the podcast. Or between the podcast and the job are both the same because I really love this.
You really love this. Okay. So if you look at what you did yesterday and you wrote down every minute what you did, how many minutes were spent on your family, podcast, or work?
It's a really good question. I would say mostly on the podcast.
Right. Okay. So isn't that interesting? So then what's, I don't want to say neglected. That's like kind of a drastic word, but that family piece, right? That was the first thing you told me that was like the most important. Interesting, isn't it?
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. You can draw your own conclusion. So how do you recapture your time so that it doesn't feel so fleeting and always escaping you, and bring it in and spend it in the places that you want to spend it on? That takes some looking at. I call it like the do, plan, delegate, eliminate type of question. right? Because we like to spend time sometimes on things that are urgent, but not necessarily important.
That's true.
There's the family. They're important, but a lot of times they're not urgent because they're always going to be there. They're not going anywhere.
Right. And I think I should say, I struggle with, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, especially when first starting out, of not wanting to delegate anything, first because of cost. And then secondly, because for me, I'm kind of a control freak when it comes to stuff like that. Like, I want it perfect, but you're right. Could anybody edit my podcast? Probably. There's a lot of editors out there.
If you did pass that off, how would that impact the capacity of what you could do?
Exactly. You have to take into account the time that it's costing you and how much your time is worth.
Yes. When we talk about delegation, which is a great topic, here's the thing I want you to think about with that. There's 5 levels of delegation. All delegating doesn't look the same. So there's delegating where you say to someone, I want you to go edit the podcast and I want you to actually put it out there in the world. Like, I'm out. So you don't have to ask me any questions. I totally trust you. That's like what I would call like a level 5 delegation. There's also then like level 1, which is just like, hey, will you research and come back and show me how I can edit this maybe more efficiently? And then in between, there's other levels where you might say, hey, I want you to edit it, but then I want you to send it back to me so I can review it. And then I'll send it back to you and you'll put it out in the world. It helps to get clear on what level of delegation you're comfortable with. And it also then helps the relationship between you and the person you have delegated to. A great, easy example of this, as I like to use, is folding towels. Okay. Like, we are not the only people in the world that could fold a towel in our household. I'm just going to guess, but we may not like the way they do it. It might not get done in the exact minute we want it to get done. They might get put in the closet or drawer in a different way. So we have to kind of decide where our level of trust is within the delegation process. And does it really matter if they're folded the other way?
Yes. No. Told you, control freak. No, right. You're absolutely right. And I think it could be a process, right? So when you first start delegating to that one particular person, as they build your trust and you can feel that, let go of the control.
Let go of the control. And if you can look at this, analyze this, like, where am I? What's my trust level now? Can I get it so that I could potentially just tell them to go fold the towels and never look at them again? It may take some time, but in the end, it's probably worth it. It's worth it because it's freeing up long-term space in your brain to do other things.
That's true. And that's where the whole figure out what's really important to you comes into play.
Correct.
You know, the other thing that I struggle with that I noticed is a topic that you cover is I'm really passionate about what it is that I do. How do I get other people to understand that it's important to me? Because it's really difficult to say, like, I have to spend time on this because it's important to me. You're important too. So it's very conflicting for me.
So this guilt thing comes in, right? Because you think you should be spending time with them because they're not really getting it. They're feeling neglected. Okay. So there's 2 things to this. Number 1 is that these are all thoughts. If you spent 4 hours on your podcast and 1 hour with your child, those are just facts. Like, I spent 4 hours working on my podcast and 1 hour with my kids. You have thoughts about that ratio of time. Like, what are some of your thoughts? Like, give me some thoughts on that.
That it's unfair to them that I'm spending so much time and so much more time that I am with them.
Okay. So first of all, the problem there is you're projecting what you think they're thinking. We don't really know what they're thinking. You have to kind of make these thoughts about you. So is the thought, I should be spending more time with them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if the thought is, I should be spending more time with them, how does that make you feel?
Guilty that I don't, and kind of selfish because in this case, I'm putting myself before I'm putting time with them.
So if you're feeling guilty, what's your action or reaction or inaction that happens from that? What do you do?
Usually it's a reaction because then I start getting irritable because I'm mad at myself and then it makes it even worse.
Right. So the result of all of that is nothing great, right? Nothing great. How it shows up in the world is you being irritable, nothing changes, and everybody's kind of just blah. Okay. So that's kind of like evidence of your thought that I should be doing something, not that it's happening. And is that really useful? Is that thought I should be spending more time with them really useful? Is it getting you anywhere?
No.
No. So if you want to spend more time with them, well, first of all, I guess I would examine, should you be spending more time with them? Like, who says?
Good point. Good point.
Is that a fact?
I guess it's an opinion, but I think it's an opinion that a lot of people have.
Okay. But do you have it?
It depends on which part of me you ask, because, there's the work part of me who would rather be here in this kind of conversation all day long. I could do this 24/7. And then there's a mom side of me that knows that it's good to spend time with them. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm being myself. So I don't want to give that up.
So it sounds to me like you enjoy working.
I do.
What if the time that you were spending with them, let's say it is only an hour, or not only, it is an hour. What if that 1 hour could be super enjoyable? You're spending more time on work, probably because you just said to me, it's like you finally feel like you're enjoying it. It's not to say that you don't enjoy spending time with them, but it's harder.
For sure.
For sure.
Thank you. That actually does help a lot. So make it quality time, not necessarily quantity, and then change the mindset around it's only an hour. I'm spending so much less time with them.
Yes.
Instead of being there thinking about how I should be doing my podcast, I guess do it consciously.
Exactly. Like think about how you can make both the podcast time and the kid time. I always like to say, can it be simple, doable, and fun? How can this time I'm spending with them be simple in the sense of that it's just me and them, and we don't have to worry about other things? I'm not worrying about making dinner or folding towels. Make it fun. And then the podcast time can be fun. If it's not simple, doable, and fun, then we don't want to do it.
Right. And I think that's a tool that everybody can apply, because it really should be something that you are happy with and enjoying that time, dedicating your time to it because it's important to you. Yeah, that kind of ties everything.
It does. It does. So it's like you're adding to your value bank in the world through the podcast, but you're also adding to the value bank of the world by spending time with your kids. So hopefully they're becoming great little human beings.
That's a really great point. And also very important.
Yeah.
Is there a way for me to communicate to my family, friends, everybody, that this is something that is important to me and that's why I'm dedicating my time to it? And can I kind of get them to understand or support me?
Can we get anyone to do anything?
No, we can't make them.
So there's two things: understanding you and supporting you. If we talk about supporting you, that can look like a lot of different things, right? So that can be money. That can look like giving you the time to work on it, which is an interesting concept in and of itself, because it's like, how do you give someone time? But really, I want to ask you, are you looking for permission?
Ooh, that's a good one too. And it's a very huge component of who I am. So it's something that I'm working on. So yes, I guess I do need them to give me permission. How do I make that happen?
You have to give yourself permission. You have to give yourself permission, because do you really need their permission?
Dun, dun, dun. No, I don't. I really don't.
No.
I'm a grown woman.
Yeah, you're a grown woman, right? Like you're doing it, right? So you have to give yourself permission. I have this free download that's called the 5 permission slips we all need but don't know we need, something to that effect. Because we have to give ourselves permission sometimes that it's okay, if you're talking about parents, to serve chicken nuggets, right? We have to give ourselves permission to go work on things we want to work on, because no one else is really going to give us permission, because we're adults. This is like adult emotional maturity. We're not kids anymore. We don't need a permission slip signed. So when we talk about like, I wish they could support me, what I'm really looking for is permission.
Right.
Yeah.
Ooh, you're making me reflect all kinds on what I'm actually thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It really is, because that's the way our brains work.
Yeah. And then you said to me, how do I get them to think X, Y, and Z? We can't get them to think X, Y, and Z. But what we can point out to them is what they're making something mean. So if you go back to like the 4-to-1 ratio, 4 hours podcast, 1 hour kids. Okay, that was a fact. You could make that mean, I want to spend these 4 hours on the podcast and I want to spend 1 hour with my kids. They could be making it mean, Veronica's got the ratio all wrong. You're making it mean I got the ratio all right. They're making it mean I got the ratio all wrong. So what I kind of say to my clients is like, hey, just pointed out that we're making this fact mean two different things. And one isn't right and one isn't wrong, but we have to learn how to now move forward. Let's recognize that you're making it mean one thing and I'm making it mean another. How do we resolve this and move forward? We can't really change the way they're thinking, but we can, I like to say, like working out of the same manual or handbook, because your handbook of what this should look like or manual might be different than what their manual might be. So you kind of have to join the manuals together.
Wow. So let me recap everything I've heard so far. Just for our listeners, just in case you guys can't follow, because I'm all over the place.
Yes.
First of all, you have to decide what is important to you and then focus on those things. So eliminate, delegate to the other tasks.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you choose to spend that time, then you need to do it with intention and focus solely on that so that you can be fully present, recognizing that you will bring into your life the other pieces as it comes along. Then, if you're spending your time on something, make sure you're not guilting yourself about all the stuff that you're not doing, because first of all, it's counterproductive. And then second of all, you're creating a judgment on what is important to you, which may or may not be fact. So find if there's fact in it and then make changes accordingly. But if there's not, just do it.
That's right. You're a good student.
Yes. One thing I wanted to ask you, I had seen on your speaker sheet, you talk about not being a lone ranger. What does that mean to be a lone ranger?
I think sometimes we want, kind of a little bit what we're talking about today. We want everybody to be on board in kind of two different ways. You're a business owner and you've got employees or contractors working with you. You just want their buy-in. Like, everybody needs to buy into this concept or buy into what we're doing here. At home, you want everybody to buy in too. How do you do that? Again, we could spend weeks on this, but the quick version is, do they know what they're buying into? What is your vision, mission, or focus? Lots of different words we could use there for your business. What is your vision of what this new setup might look like or family dynamic might look like? Do they even know what they're buying into? That's the quick version.
You make a really good point, because I don't think I've ever explained. If I told them the vision that I see for it, where I want it to go, then maybe they would understand a little bit better.
Yeah. And how they can play a role in it, because they can by cooperating or whatever. Folding towels.
Yeah. Folding towels the right way.
Yes.
I feel like I've been asking so many questions and you're providing so much valuable information. So first of all, thank you for that.
You are welcome. A lot of my clients come to me with two things. One, they don't necessarily know why they're feeling the way they're feeling, and they just want to feel different about whatever it may be. I always kind of point out to them, you're kind of stuck in the peanut butter jar. Like, we're all in our own little Skippy, Jiffy peanut butter jars, stuck in there. And when we're in there, we really can't read the label. It's really hard to understand and see what all the ingredients are that are going into why we're feeling the way we're feeling, or why something is happening, or why something is not happening. And it is okay to ask for help. There's no rule that says you need to learn how to do all of this on your own, that you have to be the podcast editor by yourself, or you need to figure out how to do the back end of your website, or you need to be the one making dinner every night. There's no rules that say that. We think there are, but there's no declaration that says any of that. So when you're in your own little peanut butter jar stuck in there, it's really hard to see what's going on. And it's okay to ask for help. And it doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that you're not capable. It doesn't mean any of that. And it sometimes doesn't even cost any money. I mean, listening to podcasts is free. That's a form of you getting some help for it yourself. And I always like to say, what if you could upgrade your life and business? What would that look like? How would it feel? Everybody deserves the upgrade, right? We don't all have to fly in coach. We can all fly in first class. It might involve changing a few things around and thinking about yourself and your world differently. But what would happen if you upgraded or up-leveled your world? I don't know if that's helpful, but
it is. I'm sitting here thinking, like, what would that look like for me? Earlier, we talked about making sure that we delegate the tasks that aren't necessarily important or that don't need to be done specifically by us. It sounds like this kind of ties into that, because it doesn't just cost you time, it costs you money because that's time that you're not spending on something that actually makes you money or that's like part of your core
Correct.
business. But it also, I think it gets done better. If you find someone who is passionate, then it's going to get done with passion as opposed to somebody who's going,
Yeah, you're buying yourself time and energy, and it's probably going to get done better. And then you can actually go make more money doing what only you can do.
I think that's something that was really hard for me to understand when I was first starting out as an entrepreneur. And I see other people struggling with it as well. So if they only get that one piece from this podcast, I think it'll be worth it because people usually start their own business because they are passionate about something. They don't want to work a 9 to 5. They want to do this specific thing. And I think once they do, if they don't learn how to delegate and put those things off, not only are they going to get burned out and possibly not succeed, but it's a lot more stressful when you're trying to do everything alone.
Yes. And a lot of times I see entrepreneurs not having any sense of the money that's going in and out. And that in and of itself is stressful. And when you start a business, if you're in the beginning stages, I mean, I would not be expecting it to make a profit, at least in the first year. And I think then that also then ties into like the support thing, because a lot of times our families will say, well, I mean, are you making money yet? Like, what's going on? So then we hesitate to delegate things out or to get help, coaching, marketing, whatever that help looks like. Editing, if you're an entrepreneur, your best marketing tool is yourself. And our 3 most valuable resources are time, money, and brain power. Are you spending enough of those resources on yourself?
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, 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 right?
You ask all these impactful questions and I'm like, I don't know, because I've never thought about it in that way. And it's true. And that's exactly why having a coach is so valuable, because they help you see something from a completely different angle.
Exactly.
Even if you think you know what you're doing, all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow.
Right.
I didn't even see that coming.
Nope, you didn't.
Where can people connect with you?
So they can listen to the podcast, Time to Level Up. They can also connect with me via my website, which is Andrea Liebross, Liebross.com. And I am on Instagram, Facebook, and I am on LinkedIn. And I have lots of free downloads also on Pinterest.
Ooh, I'm going to have to go check that out. Yeah, I actually just started a Pinterest board for the podcast and I'm excited to get that going.
I always thought about Pinterest as a place to find crockpot recipes, but there's a lot of good business stuff on Pinterest.
I was surprised too. The reason I started one is because I did have a Pinterest specialist come on the podcast and explaining how Pinterest works, as well as how important it is, because it's one of the few social media platforms that lives forever. When you post on any of the other sites, those posts are gone. I mean, they're on your feed, but nobody's ever going to see them. Whereas Pinterest is very search engine optimized and they don't die.
Right. And they can link. It's easy to link things.
Right. Exactly. And that leads to the other important key thing, which is getting people to your website. So
correct.
Pinterest is where it's at, apparently. Is there anything that I may have missed, or do you have any final thoughts?
My message to everybody out there is to really think about how you are using your 3 most valuable resources and how you can enhance them. So how you can create more time for yourself, how you can create more money, maximize your brain power. And that's a place too where you can spend resources, because your brain power is the most valuable resource, because you can use that to create more time and create money. So if you're not investing in your own brain power, then I think you're missing out.
That's a good one. I have to ask you this now, even though I said, what's your final thought? How do you invest in your brain power?
You're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So who are you spending time with? Are they helping you? Are they inspiring you? And are they supporting you? And that can look like a lot of different things. We can have family that supports us. We can have friends that support us. We can have colleagues that support us. And we also can seek out our own support systems, whether that's in counseling or coaching or consulting.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I wanted to thank you so much for being on the podcast, Andrea. I learned a lot, and I know our listeners did too. I'm going to put all of that information in the show notes, including links to your freebies, because I'm going to go check those out right now.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you having me.
Great, guys. I'll be back to wrap up the show right after this. That was a great interview with Andrea, and I truly enjoyed it. I hope the questions that I asked helped you, because as I've said many times before, this podcast is to facilitate my learning and your learning so that we can all be successful together. If you guys have any questions or topic ideas or guest suggestions, I'm happy to hear them. I want this to be a podcast where you can come to get the information that you need to grow personally and professionally. As always, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you next time on the Biz Essentials. Bye.
You've been listening to the Biz Essentials. Thanks for listening to the show. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information, learning how to be productive, be successful, be joyful, and more importantly, be yourself, and turning your dreams into successful passion projects. By listening to this show, you've already set into motion the most important part, starting. So it's important to catch the next episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. In the meantime, hook up with us on social media at Veronika Ventures and at the Biz Essentials. Till next time, this is the Biz Essentials.
Here's today's quote of the day. The key question to ask is, are you spending your time on the right things? Because time is all you have. Randy Posh. Thanks again for joining me today, guys. I truly appreciate it, and I'll catch you next time on the Biz Essentials. Bye.